Hey everybody, it's Bust with our feedback for the November 2022 Dev Snapshot. And so, if you head yourself over to the Play Runeterra site, you can go to the news section and there will be the November 2022 Dev Snapshot. They're giving you a bit of a taste of what's to be coming up in 2023. If you click the link, it takes you over to a YouTube video. Sheriff Dave telling us about all of the upcoming features, be it rotations and draft formats and stuff. That's an exciting watch there. At the end of it, they send you over to the old Reddit and they say, hey, check out this Reddit thread. We want some laser focused feedback on tournaments and gauntlets. And so, this is going to be, my kind of feedback choice on that. What I must say first before we dive into the feedback is what I always call the World of Warcraft problem. This is something I've talked about in quite a few of our videos, and I'll get you a little refresher in case you're new here with Bust. And so everybody knows what the World of Warcraft is, right? It's been around for 20 years. MMO has all these wonderful features in it. It is the kind of baseline for what any MMO can be. And so Riot, the wonderful makers of Legends of Runeterra, they have an MMO coming out soon. I don't know. I don't follow it. I don't know exactly when it's going to be here. But I can tell you what people are going to expect. They're going to fire up the Riot MMO and they're going to say, cool, I played the World of Warcraft. This should have a crafting system. This should have trading with players. This should have an auction house. This needs a bank to hold all my shit. It needs to have a shop where I can sell all my gray items. Cool, got it. Let's continue. It needs to have quests. It should have solo quests. It should have daily quests. It should have group quests. Okay, that's a lot, but sure, fine. And then it should have dungeons, right? It should have dungeons good for the story. It should have dungeons good for loot. These dungeons should have an easy mode for the story people. It should have a hard mode for the loot people. Okay, fine, gotcha. But 5-man dungeons aren't enough. It needs to have bigger ones. It needs to have raids so we can fight the epic enemies. It needs to have 10-man, 25, 30-man. Hey, maybe your new thing will be a 50-man raid. Maybe it should have that too. That sounds neat and interesting. Okay, that again should have story mode, normal mode, epic mode. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of stuff. And cool, I'm tired of fighting bosses. Bosses are dumb. I got a big brain. I need to fight humans. And the humans are where it's at, so it needs to have duels so I can fight one-on-one. It needs to have arena so we can team fight. It needs to have world PvP so we can go and battle amongst the quest folk. And then, well, I don't like that, so it should have a PvP server and a PvE server because I don't want to get killed doing my quests. But I do want to have battlegrounds so I can have 10 versus 10 fights against all these humans. And so you just get this massive, massive, massive pile of expectations that all get tied into the game. And you can't please everyone, and I can assure you that when Riot's MMO comes out, it's not going to have all those things. And so as we kind of switch back over to the world we're familiar with here in the lands of Legends of Runeterra, I assume that the vast majority of the folks in Legends of Runeterra have played some kind of card game in the past, be that Magic in digital, Magic in paper. If you want to play something like Hearthstone or Duelist or whatever, you've probably played some other kind of card game in the past, and that opens you up to expectations for the future. And so you start to compare Legends of Runeterra to Magic, and you say, okay, it needs an evergreen format where all the cards are good. It needs a current format like Standard. It needs a draft format. You need to have tournaments. You need to have a Friday Night Magic. You need to have community events. You need to have small tournaments. You need to have big tournaments, right? You can get these expectations built up very quickly. Then you can switch over to Hearthstone and you can say, oh, wow, Hearthstone has these other formats. It has some kind of dungeon run. It has some kind of solo PvE content. It has another take on the draft format. It has this, it has that, it has this, it has that. And then the Legends of Runeterra, it should have all of that. And so it's very tough to tie all that stuff in into what your expectations should be. And so what I would really like to see in terms of my feedback for Riot and what they need to do is the mission statement. And then I know this sounds kind of dumb. You go to your high school business class, they say bust. You're going to open up a banana stand, right? What's the statement for your banana stand? It's got to be more than there's money in the banana stand. We know that one, but what's your mission? What's your big deal? When you are a Fortune 500 banana stand, what's going to be that call to action that all of your patrons love to hear? And I don't feel like that really exist for the Legends of Runeterra. What is the Legends of Runeterra really good at? Or if they aren't good at it now, what are they focusing on being good at? And so if you aren't entirely familiar with the history of the game, it was initially set up to where you had to play Expedition. That was the limited draft format. If you did good in your Expedition, that unlocked champions or champion wildcards or some shit. I don't fully remember. But through your progress in the Expedition, that got you the physical cards. Those physical cards you could then take to Constructed and play the ladder Nobody liked that. Everyone just wanted the cards right from the start. They said, Riot, this is dumb. They said, okay, cool. We're going to cancel expeditions. We're going to put all of those cards into the weekly chest. You don't have to do that anymore. Great. And so, a year or so after that, we switched from being to that kind of learning phase, that learning area, to being, okay, cool, we're going to have the Path of Champions. Path of Champions is the big thing. We're focusing on Path of Champions. We're going to be a Path of Champions game. Cool, got it. And then 6 months after that, they say, well, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to be the Path of Champions game. We're going to be the competitive game. We're going to focus on the competitive PvP now. That's going to be our new shtick. Path of Champions, you're not getting taken out, but we're not going to pay attention to you anymore, right? You're the girlfriend from old. We got the new one with the job and the pretty haircut and everything. You were a nice moment in our life, but we're not going to focus on you anymore. And so that is where I kind of like tie in with this. If you're really going to focus on PvP, that's fine. Be good at it. You don't need to focus on Gauntlet. You don't need to focus on Path of Champions. You don't need to focus on Labs. You don't need to focus on Eternal PvP. You don't need to focus on current PvP. Like, this is just all way too much shit at one point. And I feel like Riot needs to just say, okay, we're going to pick one. This is it. This is what we're picking. And this is what we're going to be good at. We're not saying this other stuff's not going to catch any attention for the remainder of the game, but we're aware of the World of Warcraft problem. We know this kind of space that you can get into to where you're really focusing in on way too many things, and we're going to pick this one. And once we feel really, really good about this one, then maybe we'll start to move into these other things. And so that's my kind of like idea and thought. I feel like if you asked Riot what their mission statement would be, you wouldn't be able to say. And I know that this isn't like the exact right terminology, but if you say, hey, what's Magic's mission statement? You can play it in paper. What is Magic Online's mission statement? It's that paper game, but in digital form. So when you want to practice when your friends aren't around, you can do it. Here, you got it. What's Marvel Snap's mission statement? It's a game that you can play in under 3 minutes. What's Hearthstone's mission statement? Hey, we're the first, so we have all the features, right? And so that was just a way you can look at each of those games individually and at a very high level speak to what they're good at and what they're trying to go for. But can you do that with the Legends of Runeterra? I don't think so. I don't think we can right now. I think Riot should kind of work towards that mission statement. Okay, so we've made our way over to the Reddit. This is where they are looking for laser-focused feedback on tournaments and gauntlets, specifically within tournaments and gauntlets, the formats that are exciting to you, the types of rewards you would like to see, and how do you feel about buy-in tournaments. And so I've got it pulled up on the screen to be a little bit bigger and brighter. In terms of the formats, I think this could be understood in two different ways. There is like standard, right? Standard or eternal? I'm good at typing, I swear. And with this, I don't care. You tell me. You tell me what the most popular one is, and we'll play that, right? The thing I care about with the game is the longevity. If the players want to play standard, that's the one. Players want to play Eternal, that's the one. If players want to play 100-card singleton, two-headed giant, 8-player games, that's the one. Fine. You tell me, Riot, which one is the most popular one, the one that the people want to play. That's the one that I'm in on. But the other kind of way that you could have looked at format is, say, like the round structure. And I think that's where the important space is and the one that I would like to throw my hat into the ring for. And so being an old man, you can look at the little picture of me on here. I'm old. My beard's all gray. Pretty much a boomer in terms of the digital landscape. And, I don't have the time, right? I don't have the time to devote 8 hours on a Saturday to sit around and play in a tournament. I know Seasonals is coming up. I can plan for that. But in general, I can't play the Mastering Runeterra tournament. I can't just say, hey, wife, hey, family, I'm taking 10 hours this Saturday to play in a digital card game tournament, right? If it comes around once every 2 months, I can pull that off, but with a lot of frequency, I can't. But if you start to look over towards the other games, if you want to say look at Magic in terms of leagues, right? They have a structure as to where you play until you get like 5 wins or 2 losses. It's probably something like that. It's been a decade. I don't remember. That's how Arena works in Hearthstone, right? You play to 12 wins or 3 losses, whatever you get first. That's how Gauntlet and Expedition worked here in the Legends of Runeterra. And I think that that's, actually a fantastic and great format. If I can sit down, I can play 2 rounds of tournament. I can go cook dinner. I can come back. I can play another round. Next day, I can go to work. I can say, oh, man, I got a meeting in 45 minutes. Let's head to the bathroom and air quotes, take a shit, sit on the toilet, play a round of the tournament. Absolutely great. Like that space to where you don't have to dedicate the entirety of a day just to play in the event is absolutely fantastic. Now, it's not to say that I don't think things like seasonal should exist. I think that big tournament structure, kind of must exist, right? If you want to get eyeballs on the game, looking at something like Worlds, right? Worlds is an advertisement for the game. Then you kind of have to have that same day structure, right? Nobody is going to tune in for a week of Worlds watching people play a digital card game, but you might get them to tune into the Top Cut and watch that. And so I get that, some events need to have that single day structure to make the logistics of it work, but for large part, I would like to see some kind of, say, league style format or some kind of longer form tournament structure that is longer than an hour, right? The gauntlet typically takes an hour, hour and a half, something a little bit longer than that, but not all within one day. Okay, and so to speak to the last remaining two, how do you feel about buy-in tournaments? Great. That's an easy one. Let's get that one out of the way. How do we feel? Good. Dot. End of story. Okay, and so then the next one, what type of reward would you look forward to the most? I think that's kind of an interesting space, right? And I think it needs kind of broken down into two. And so I've kind of had thoughts here recently on the land of the competitive space and how we fit in, right? If you're not familiar with my channel and what we do, I live in that space to where we hit Masters every season. We play in seasonals. We do mediocre to bad in seasonals, and then that's the kind of end of it, right? I'm completely fine with where we live, but do I deserve to have a world in the competitive space that just doesn't involve playing in worlds, right? I feel like that's where the vast majority of the players is the player in Platinum that wants to be competitive any less valuable than that player that's about to compete in worlds. And so I think you have to kind of look at it into kind of like two spaces, right? You have that worlds competitor kind of space, the top of the top, the best of the best, the biggest and brightest of the game. And that's, a very small piece of the pyramid, that like small group of people up at the top. But then down in the way more numerous section of players, down at the bottom, the platinums, the diamonds, the dumpster masters of us of the world, the ones of us that spend our time at Friday Night Magic on the weekend, that's where you have to look towards the second space. And so with those two kind of like groups in mind, I feel like that's where we can start to think about the types of rewards that you would like to see. The big one that you can always draw to the game is what you would call straight cash homie. For those of you not familiar with Randy Moss, the greatest NFL wide receiver of all time, he went to Marshall University, the greatest university of all time. You can go look up his disgusting act. He did a very disgusting act in an NFL game. They fined him for his disgusting act. They said, Randy, how are you going to pay for that fine? And he said, straight cash homie. And so I think most of that could be applied. Everyone would like to get that money aspect to it. And I think that is what appeals to the kind of top of the pyramid. And so if you're wanting to have monthly big buy-in events that pay out cash, I think that would be great. That's something that really attunes well to the competitive crowd. And I think something that would flow well with the cadence that we kind of see play through in Runeterra, as to where you have a monthly release of a set, and then you have a seasonal tournament, and then next month you have a big patch and nothing. And so I think it would be kind of interesting if, with that tie-in of the cadence that we're looking for, to where we have a set release one month, a big patch next month, set release one month, big patch next month, that you get to go and then tie that in with your tournament structure. So you have the set release, and then 2 weeks later you have seasonals, and then you have the big patch release, and 2 weeks later you have your straight cash homie tournament, and then 2 weeks later you have a set. It gives you this thing that you don't have in Runeterra that you see in Magic, as to where there's something always interesting happening. And that something interesting should probably be tied into the big events. And so if we're going to have a big release event, right, the release of the Darkened Saga finale, attach a tournament to it. And then if you have a big patch later, attach a tournament to it. And so that is kind of like the first piece. And you can see this a little bit with Magic and their Arena Opens. They have an unlimited buy-in day one, that if you hit 7 wins or whatever, you get to play in the second day. Then the second day, you get a straight cash payout, determining on how you do. I think that would, ideally tie in well with the features that already exist in the game, and would be a nice tournament structure thing to look for that peak of the pyramid competitive player. And then, of course, everyone at the bottom that are wanting to rise up and get that shot at glory. Then the second one, though, that I think is more realistic, probably has to be cosmetics. And I'm on board with the cosmetic rewards. I think it's fine. In terms of the game itself, like if I'm going to play in a tournament, I might be in the minority. I don't know. I've played this game since it started, but I have 700,000 dust. I have a almost completely full collection, right? We could just come in and fill this out if we wanted. It's like 10 cards short, whatever. We're completely full on the bottom, almost full on the top. If you go to the store to check out the amount of wild cards we have, I have like, I don't know, 8 sets of wild cards built up here, right? There's no like card-based reward that I'm going to get that makes me interested or satisfied, right? And so that just kind of pushes right into the space of needing to be somewhat interested in cosmetics. And I think people can get pretty on board with that, right? I feel like a large portion of the community probably comes from the lands of League of Legends, and in League of Legends, the skins have always been big and popular, and getting some kind of unique skin is always interesting for everyone, right? You can go to Riot. You can go to the League of Legends thing, get all your favorite skins. You can go play CS:GO and pay $10,000 for skins if you want. However you want to do it. It's fairly easy to say that cosmetics are fairly popular. But then the other kind of piece of these is the kind of clout factor, right? And it may or may not apply to you. I don't know. But I knew literally dozens of people that if they won a Friday Night Magic, that was probably the highlight of their month. And having some kind of way to showcase that victory was always a big thing for them, whether or not that was saying I got points on the leaderboard or I bested the best or whatever it was. The kind of like low level competitive scene is what builds up to the top of that pyramid, right? And I don't feel like that low level scene exists. I feel like that scene could be really built up with the use of cosmetics, whether or not that is a reward for playing and then a second reward for doing better. I think that that's a reasonable and realistic place to look towards in terms of getting the players hype about things. And so that's it. That's my feedback. Agree or disagree, you can let me know down in that comments section. And that is going to do it for us today. And so I hope every one of you out there has yourself a good one.